I'll call this meeting to order a few minutes late, but for CAMPO for the November 27th meeting. Can I get roll call, please, Kathy?
Chairperson Kimbrough?
Here.
Vice Chairperson Bonkowski?
Here.
Member Bagwell?
Here.
Member Erb?
Here.
Member Hastings? Member Smolinski?
Here.
Member Zentino? Ex officio Member Berry?
Here.
Quorum is present.
Thank you. Next, is there any items on the agenda? We're going to change an order. I would doubt that, huh?
Not tonight.
Okay,
Thank you, Chair.
thank you. And there's a lot of no action here, but is there any disclosures maybe for approving the minutes or something for the meeting tonight? No disclosures for any item? Public comment. This is a chance for the public. If there's anybody from the public who'd like to come forward on items not on the agenda, this is a good time to do that. Seeing none, I'm going to bring it back for approval of the minutes from the October 11th meeting. Do I have comments or a motion?
Mr. Chair, I would move to approve the minutes of CAMPO for October 11th, 2017 as presented.
Second. Thank you, Jim. Any other discussion? Seeing none, call for the question. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carries unanimous. Go to the public meeting. Items now, 6A, overview of CAMPO's data collection procedures and summaries for walking, biking, and driving. Lucia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to tee up these two items. It's become clear to me that I may be alone in my enthusiasm for transportation data, so I want to impart that on you for today a little bit. As the MPO for the Tri-County region, we're monitoring, tracking, and evaluating performance of our system all the time, right? How is our infrastructure and how is it used? This includes roadways, bicycle facilities, sidewalks, transit system, and our assets. And we do this to inform both selection of capital projects, but also to help us with our longer-term planning efforts as in our role as MPO. The methods that we use differ by mode, and that's why you see two presentations here tonight. And of course, we'll hear them separately, but that's why. But across the board, what you're going to see is that we've been investing in tools and technology that help us do this better, that help us be more transparent and efficient at what we're doing. So for roadways and sidewalks, we've purchased state-of-the-art bicycle, pedestrian, and vehicle counters that we're using. We're evaluating the performance of our network. We're helping staff understand where improvements are needed. And we're providing robust and targeted information to other departments in the city, such as the Sheriff's Office, when we get concerns about speeding, for example, to help us perform better as a city, even though we're not always in the same office. We're also streamlining processes and procedures to minimize human error in data collection and reporting, to standardize the deliverables so folks know what they can expect, and to increase transparency about the results so you all have confidence in what we're doing. And finally, we're following industry best practice methodology, and we're conducting ongoing monitoring, but we're also being flexible, and that we're providing the opportunity for ad hoc requests from the public or CAMPO partners too, while also being able to do what we're required to do. So Haley's going to provide an overview of bike, ped, and vehicle monitoring in item 6A. And then for transit, we have contracts with Bishop Peak and Ego Lane, and these are web-based software that allow us to look at real-time transit performance information, to mine that information, and to optimize how we're using our limited transit funds, and to provide better customer service. At the same time, our staff have been meeting with NDOT and MPO statewide to develop a set of transit performance measures with what we're calling the Planning Executive Group, the PEG, at NDOT. So that we have a set of performance measures that are standard across the MPOs and statewide. They meet federal requirements, and they also, again, minimize the burden on staff to report those measures and to monitor them over time. So Graham's going to report on that in item 6B. So that's kind of the package of all of our modes. We've kept this really brief by design. We want to make you aware of what we're doing day to day, but we want to also provide the opportunity for you to ask questions. And if you have any suggestions about how we can make performance data more interesting for you or the public going forward, or if there's a way we can bring it forward to you in a recurring way, we appreciate those suggestions as well.
Thank you.
Okay. So CAMPO purchased 4 pedestrian counters and 2 bicycle counters using federal planning funds in October 2016, and began deploying counters in July 2017 to help evaluate facility needs for the transportation network. Per the Complete Streets Performance Monitoring Program, the counters rotate around 4 corridors: North Carson Street, Downtown Carson Street, South Carson Street, and William Street. Pedestrian counters are out for about 1 month at a time, while the bicycle counters are out for about 1 week at a time in order to collect baseline data. Once the data is collected, staff downloads the data into our EcoVisio software where we're able to monitor trends. CAMPO relies on counts from NDOT's annual reports and Carson City Public Works speed and volume reports. NDOT data can be accessed on their Traffic Records Information Access website. CAMPO purchased 5 Pico Count counters in 2015 and began using them the same year. The Pico Count counters collect data such as traffic volume, vehicle classifications, and vehicle speeds. The number of vehicle counters that are deployed each month vary as needs developed, and the counters are usually out for about a week at a time. Once the data is collected, staff downloads the data into our Traffic Viewer software, and that data is then broken up into 15-minute intervals and categorized by either speed or volume. So we've been working to refine the collection process and procedures, and we've developed forms to standardize the installation and removal process, as well as who will be downloading the data. Looking forward, we are finalizing a form that our CAMPO partners can use to request the bicycle and pedestrian counters as needed. Those are my comments.
Any questions? Go ahead, Joe.
In reading the, which was it? Oh, the challenges and successes. So I see that it said that at one point in time on the pedestrian count, it was also picking up automobile. Mm-hmm. So is that reflected in any of these graphs that you have in the packet?
I don't believe so, no.
So looking at daily counts in September of 17, you got serious spikes, 3 or 4 times. Was there anything going on in the downtown corridor during those times that would have increased the pedestrian counts, like Wine Walk or anything else?
We did check out those dates. It's a great question. We looked into it. There were no special events that we could find, and nothing to indicate that the counters malfunctioned. But over time, certainly that's something that we keep an eye on and monitor.
Okay, thanks.
I'm sure it's all those great new street improvements.
Absolutely.
So I would hope that maybe there's a way, with all these skills that you have, to do a press release using data from other communities that are kind of equal to Carson about how the number of bikes or pedestrians comes in percentage, just showing a picture versus a graph or a number, drawing a picture that somehow what people were saying before, you saw in the press before, that there weren't enough bicycles and why did you build this. Any opportunity you get when you finally have the data to share that with the community, but it's like you say, data collection's a hard one to present and get people excited about. And I bet you even Courtney might have seen some stuff maybe from other states and some of the things she's gone to, how to use that data to show this is a biking public and that they're using the downtown and that this is just a small little picture of what's going on. So that'd be the only challenge. I don't have a solution. But I know that picture would help really generate some ideas to people in the community, not ideas, show them that this is a success. I mean, that's a lot of bikes. People think that, there's only 18 bikes, but if you do that over 30 days, that's a big deal for use of a facility. So it's just another challenge for you, and I bet you between you and your staff and Courtney, you might figure out how to paint that picture somehow.
That's a great suggestion. And over time, we'll be able to see trends, August of this year versus August of next year. And hopefully we start seeing more and more use of these non-auto modes. So we'll work on that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Hi, thank you. So maybe you can help me understand what I'm actually looking at in the 2 charts. So I have 1.1, which is the August results. And then I have September results, and I thought I just heard you say that the corrections were already completed for August. So if I look at this, you're saying Carson Street downtown on August 5th had over 1,400 pedestrians, yet when I go into September, there's no green at all, and yet I see I don't understand the charts. Is that because there was no placements?
So the reason for that is in the Complete Streets Performance Monitoring Program, we have a schedule outlined of where we're going to put the certain counters, so the locations vary. So you were seeing in August, all of the counters were up, and then in September, we had 2 at the locations noted in the graph.
Okay, but when I'm looking at August, at South Carson Street, which is purple, August 5th, it's like nothing, they're like, the purple's a blip, just a tiny little blip on all of that. Yet September, you're popping up to September 7th with 350. Are we sure that August is a good baseline? There's not some error, something going on there? I mean, it just doesn't flow well here. I'm not understanding. I don't want to put out wrong information. And then when is it statistically significant? After we have 6 consistent months, 7 months? What are we looking at before we can do what Mark's talking about?
These are all good points, and it's something we're looking at. I think unfortunately, I think it's just going to take time because we did just start doing this. And as you read in the staff report, we wanted to be transparent. It's expected that we were going to have hiccups. So as we, learn to install these counters, we realized, for a little bit we did count some vehicles. So those are things we're keeping an eye on. And you're absolutely right. It may turn out that the August volumes are a blip and maybe an outlier. But for what we had so far, there was nothing to suggest that it was vehicles like that other data was, where it was just, in the thousands and thousands. So
I'm just suggesting that having, 20 pedestrians on South Carson Street, and then suddenly we have 350 on South Carson Street, which isn't the downtown. So I'm concerned somehow we have 350 on South Carson Street, and maybe I just don't know where the breakdown of the counter is, but I'm suspect of the data is all I'm saying.
Any other go ahead.
So I just looked at the calendar. August 5th was Wine Walk, so that would account for over 1,400 people walking downtown.
Yeah, but South Carson, my concern is the South Carson data between August and September. On South Carson, we jumped to 350, South Carson? Well, 350 people? Where, near Rayleigh's? I don't know where and again, I don't know where you're placing the counter, so I just don't want anybody to rely upon the data if it's not statistically maybe correct yet. And there was a Wine Walk? That's good.
Is there an easy way to explain how you guys do the truthing? I mean, do you go out how do you know if it's working or not? How's that process work?
So when we go out and install the counters, the company Ecovisio, they have a mobile app. So when we're out there in the field, we're able to activate the counters and walk by them to see if they're counting, and then so we're able to do that also in the interim. If we think maybe there's an issue with the location, we go out there and we look with the mobile app, and you're able to see the increase of numbers, and maybe that's an issue. So
can you use that mobile app at your office and check?
So it's on Android phones, and so a few of us have Android phones, and then it's also on our computer as well, so you can check it at 2 locations.
So do you have a process in your office, like once a week you check, or they're not out there that long? But
our process is normally when we download the counters, when they're supposed to come down or come up.
Okay, thank you.
So it looks like the locations for the pedestrian counters were approximately at Red's, old 395, down by the Ford dealership, and then down by Heritage Bank.
So then,
Is that correct?
at particular shopping malls, so it could be counting a pedestrian going in, coming out, and
That's correct. And there, in some instances, there's multiple counting locations within a specific corridor. So hearing these questions is helpful, and that was the intent of this presentation, to hear kind of what you're looking for. You know, in the future when we present this, we'll likely want to attach an image or a location specific tied to the data and not just attribute it to that corridor.
And is that an all-day count? So all day on August 5th, or a specific all day?
All day, yes.
Okay.
Any other questions? See, you generated a bunch of questions on your... Can we move to 6B? Let me read that. Good, thank you. Thank you, Lucia. When it was information, I read. Anybody from the public would like to come forward and speak to this item? Item 6A. Seeing none, I bring it back for 6B. Information on Jump Around Carson transit data and its relation to performance-based planning and national transit database. Graham.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As Lucia mentioned, transportation performance data is tracked throughout the year for the Jump Around Carson transit system. Data such as ridership service performance and cost metrics are tracked, much of which comply with federal requirements. Annual reports to the National Transit Database, NTD, are submitted, and this coincides with the MAP 21 and FAST Act final rules regarding performance-based planning. The summary table included in the packet shows transit data reported to NDOT in compliance with performance-based planning requirements, and that are also included in the annual report to NTD. While the performance-based planning data and does not coincide exactly with the annual NTD report, everything included in the performance-based data is already included in the annual NTD report. So there are a lot of numbers to take in there on the summary page, so I'll just make mention of a couple. For the unlinked passenger trips, although we're showing a dip in fixed route ridership from fiscal year 16 to fiscal year 17, so far in fiscal year 18 we are far outpacing ridership from fiscal year 17 and have even broken ridership records for individual bus routes in certain months. So things are certainly looking up in terms of ridership. And then the other thing I'll mention is the last two rows there in the table. Those are the Transit Asset Management, or TAM plan, performance targets that were approved at the last CAMPO meeting. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Graham, if you look at fiscal year 16 versus fiscal year 17, as you mentioned, ridership is down in 17, but fare revenue is up. Why is that? Just not as many discounted fares? Or?
Correct. Yeah, there's always going to be variation in the type of fares that you receive. This could just be a result of more full adult fares being paid, the full $1 versus the free senior rides that we have. So,
do we have any specific data on this that you're aware of? I'm just wondering if we discounted less fares in 2017, if that's why the numbers were down, or is there no relationship between those? Just trying to understand if there's a connection between.
We do have those breakdowns, so I can certainly look into that and get back to you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, has anybody from the audience like to come forward and speak to this item? Seeing none, bring it back. It was informational only, so we move on in the agenda to item 7, future agenda items.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Right now we have 2 items that we're planning to bring forward to you in December, which is roughly 2 weeks from now. We, as you know, CAMPO received a Surface Transportation Block Grant, STBG allocation, for which we distribute between Carson, Lyon, and Douglas counties. Lyon County has requested to defer their amount to 2020 Carson City, we can use that money. We're looking to put together a project package for Fairview, which, as you know, needs some work. It experienced really high volumes before the freeway opened. So you can expect a revised STBG allocation coming to you in December, and then in the next few months as we work through the steps to build that Fairview project, those will be coming to you as well. The second item we have on the list for December is a Jack Transit $2 driver base wage increase. As you may also be aware, we've had trouble retaining drivers. This is not an uncommon thing. It's not something that we're unique in that way, but others nearby have started increasing their wages, and we need to do the same. We've been coordinating with MV Transit, our transit service provider, and they've agreed to come to the table and match the city dollar for dollar for a total of $2 increase. So I'm excited to bring that to you. And excuse me, that's going to RTC. So preview on that. I apologize. Disregard that. It's exciting, but it's not coming to you. The second item for CAMPO next month is safety performance targets for MAP 21, the federally mandated safety targets. We're required to integrate those into our regional transportation plan. So that will be coming to you in December. And for those in RTC, you can look forward to the Jack wage thing as well. Thank you.
Sure, thanks. Any board comments? None from this side, none from that side. Last chance for public comment on any item we spoke to, or any other items, actually. In front of CAMPO, seeing none, bring it back. The next meeting's tentatively scheduled for 4:30 on December 13th. I assume it's more than tentatively right now, but hopefully it's that time.
No changes anticipated.
So my next action item, I ask for somebody to motion on adjournment. So moved. We are now adjourned, and we will reconvene at 5 o'clock for RTC. All right, thank you.
call to order this meeting of the Carson City Regional Transportation Commission. Today is Monday, November 27th. We are in the Sierra Room at the Carson City Community Center. Can we have a roll call, please, Kathy?
Chairperson Bonkowski.
Here.
Vice Chairperson Smolinski. Here. Commissioner Bagwell. Here. Commissioner Kimbrough. Here. Commissioner Zentino. Quorum is present.
Thank you. Second item on the agenda is the agenda management notice. Are we taking everything in order, Lucia?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to request that we change the order of item 6C and swap it with what's currently listed as item 6D.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any requests from commission members for any changes to the agenda? All right. So then we will approve the agenda with the one change, making item 6D third and item 6C fourth on the public meeting items. Everybody have that? Okay, thank you. Disclosures. Any member of the RTC board have a disclosure to make at this time? You will also have a chance right prior to any items. I see none. Public comment. Members of the public who would wish to address the RTC may approach the podium and speak on any matter at this point. We will also have public comment prior to each item. I see nobody approaching. So we will move on to item 5, approval of the minutes. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes, please?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the minutes of the Regional Transportation Commission for October 11th, 2017.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Passes unanimously. We are now on to item 6A for possible action to approve a revised Federal Lands Access Program Project Memorandum of Agreement that documents the responsibilities for the development, construction, and future maintenance of Sierra Vista Lane. And Dirk, you're taking this item?
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, I'm happy to present this item and actually the next 7 items. So I'm going to give a little recap, or not a little recap, but a little summary so you guys don't have to hear me 7 times. But I also want to start, I feel like we're at the finish line, and we are for the most part for the design and getting ready to construct, but I also want to recognize Stephanie Hicks. I want to recognize our design team in Public Works, Rob Fellows. This was really a team effort, and there's a lot of people besides me that was doing the work. So I just wanted to take the time to recognize them. But so this is for the Sierra Vista Federal Lands Access Program grant that we received back in 2015. We applied in 2015, and we got awarded. I think it was 2016. So this is to reconstruct about a 2.5 mile portion of Sierra Vista Lane, which is in poor condition. And that 2.5 miles starts right where it intersects with Carson River Road or Pinion Hills, which is the name change once you cross the river. So the first 2 items I have here are to make some administrative corrections to some agreements. And then the remaining items have to do with right-of-way acquisition. So there's 8 properties that we dealt with. There's the Bureau of Land Management that we dealt with, and the Bureau of Indian Affairs as well. So with that, I'm going to move on to the details of 6A. 6A is a project memorandum agreement, and so this identifies and assigns responsibilities to all the different agencies. We're making revisions, 1, to the points of contacts. As you know, Patrick left, we have Lucia now, and then there was also staff changes at Central Federal Lands that we needed to incorporate. The scheduling changed. Originally, we were hoping to build in the fall of 2017, but due to design and just time it took to get through the right-of-way process, we pushed it off to the spring of 2018. So there's no additional costs to those revisions. This is really just administrative corrections. So for 6A, that concludes my comments, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Do any of the commissioners have any questions on 6A? Seeing none, is there anybody from the public that would like to speak to this item? Come on up, please. Go ahead and state your name at the podium for the record.
My name is Donna Gray, and And
This is just so we have a recording for the transcript.
my name is Donna Gray, and I wanted to thank the staff as well for all their hard work on this project. It means a lot to our community, our neighborhood in the Mexican Dam area, because it's really the only access route in for emergency vehicles. And so as it deteriorated, it became a great concern to us. My question is, as far as this administrative, the modifications to the agreement, is this something that the federal government's already on board with?
Yes, the agreement has been sent through Central Federal Lands. Their legal team and the project manager has reviewed it, and they're good with it.
Okay, so that's what I wanted to ask.
Great. Thank you very much, Donna. Is there any additional public comment from anybody in the audience? I see nobody approaching. So I will bring this back to the commission for a motion.
I'll make a motion. I move to approve a revised Federal Lands Access Program FLAP project memorandum of agreement that documents the responsibilities for the development, construction, and future maintenance of Sierra Vista Lane.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on this item? I see none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Passes unanimously. We will move on to item 6B for possible action to approve a revised Federal Lands Access Program project reimbursement agreement to reimburse Central Federal Lands Highway Division for 5% of the cost. And Dirk, take it away.
Thank you. So this is the reimbursement agreement. Again, the revisions are very, it's administrative. We're changing the schedule again. We're changing the points of contact. And we are removing language that has to do with invoicing at the end of the project. Originally, we were supposed to be invoiced monthly, and due to conflicting language, we haven't been billed yet. So we're fixing that with this revision. That's really all the changes, so there's no additional cost. And that concludes my comments.
So that means that we're then rolling the money forward since we haven't been billed, and now the invoicing will occur. So are they going to give us a lump sum invoice to catch up, or are they going to amortize it over the remaining time? How's that going to work at this point?
My understanding is that they're going to bill us for all the design work, so all the costs to date. And then was the second part of that question?
How they were going to bill it, if they were going to do a lump sum billing or if they were going to amortize it over the remaining period.
Yes, yeah, it's going to be a lump sum, but the money from last fiscal year is rolling over into this fiscal year.
Thank you. Are there additional questions from the commissioners? I see none, so I'll open this up for public comment again. I see nobody coming up, so I'll bring it back to the commission and entertain a motion.
I move to approve a revised Federal Lands Access Program project reimbursement agreement to reimburse Central Federal Lands Highway Division for 5% of the cost.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all that approve say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Passes unanimously. We are now on item 6D on the agenda. An update on the acquisition of right-of-way from the Bureau of Land Management for the roadway and associated improvements needed for the construction and maintenance of Sierra Vista Lane as part of the Federal Lands Access Program grant project across APN 010-26105.
As you know, part of the Sierra Vista Lane does go through the Bureau of Land Management. There's about 3 acres of it. Staff was hoping to have the approved permit from BLM today. It arrived a day late, so we do not have it in the packet, and so this item is informational, but do know that we have the approved permit back at the office and is signed by the BLM. So we are excited that we have the right-of-way for BLM, and you will see that on December 7th? 13th.
And that's the last piece.
And that will be the final piece, yes.
Okay, great.
And that concludes my comments with BLM.
Any questions from the commissioners? public comment? It'll be good to wrap this up. It's been a long time. All right, that is informational only, so we will move on now to item 6C on the agenda. For possible action to accept a Bureau of Indian Affairs grant of easement for roadway right-of-way and agree to pay $4,150 in just compensation to the owners as presented to Carson City by the Bureau of Indian Affairs for the roadway and associated improvements needed for the construction and maintenance of Sierra Vista Lane as part of the Federal Lands Access Program grant project across public domain allotment CC-398, also known as Assessor Parcel Number 010-29106. Dirk.
Thank you, Chair. About 1.2 acres of the roadway goes through BIA property. So we worked with BIA at the beginning of the project, and despite the long-term use of Sierra Vista Lane, BIA did not recognize the city's right to maintain and to access the property. And so we had to go through the right-of-way permit. So we applied, we submitted an appraisal with the application. The end result was received in the middle of November. We received an approved grant of easement. The just compensation for this land is about $4,150, and that's going to be taken out of the undesignated projects account for the RTC. The lifelong maintenance of the property that was acquired will come out of the street maintenance account. So we are happy. We received the grant permit, and the request is for RTC to accept the grant easement.
Thank you, Dirk. Is there any questions from the commissioners? Go ahead, Lori.
So the money for this right-of-way is coming out of our undesignated. Why isn't it a project cost? Is there insufficient money in the project?
Part of it had to do with trying to anticipate all the costs, and we budgeted $100,000 the first year, $100,000 the second year, and even though we thought the project was going to come towards the end of 2017, we weren't sure with the federal government how long it would take for the invoices, and so we just tried to incrementally do it. And so it's just, some of the costs we weren't sure of all the costs, and so we kind of used this line item for that purpose.
Well, yeah, it isn't a lot of money, but I tend to believe we should actually capture all of the costs for a project. So if you're not project tagging this, then the cost to do Sierra Vista Lane will be $4,150 off. And so my question is, let's say we paid for it out of this account for now, but it's actually a project cost. Could it be journaled to the project at a later date? Or do you have to tag it the first place?
All the project costs are tagged with Sierra Vista Lane, so we will be able to go back and track exactly what costs are associated with this project.
But can we get it at the 95.5% is what I'm after, right? Isn't the project 95%?
These costs
and 5% of the city?
These costs, like the appraisal, and is in addition to the local match.
So it's outside of the 95.5% rule. This is 100% street money.
So, Dirk, are you saying that the $200,000 that's been budgeted has been completely allocated? Because if I'm hearing Lori's question correctly, can it be rolled into that $200,000, or is that money already allocated towards specific expenses?
Yeah, that's correct. Though, the $200,000 is budgeted for the local share, and so we would want to the next opportunity for the fiscal year. The next coming fiscal year would to budget more additional money for Sierra Vista Lane, and so that way we'll be able to have additional money for that local share. So when they invoice us, and then we could use some of that money possibly from one of the previous years, instead of hitting the undesignated projects account.
I'm not sure. My take to the short answer of this question is the 4150 is in addition to the 200,000. The 200,000 is essentially bookmarked as the local match for this larger project. The 4150 is not part of that local match. It's not reimbursable at the 95%. And so I think that's what you were asking.
Up on that, yes, the question is it not eligible for the 95.5? Is obtaining right-of-ways a not eligible expense, or I just want to make sure we can get the 95% if at all possible.
It wasn't.
If not,
It wasn't part of the agreement. If we could have, we didn't. But it's not part of the existing agreement.
Darren?
It's a good question, Darren Schultz for the record. And Dirk got there, but it's, if I remember, and Dirk and Patrick when we set this up, but it was very that original agreement that we put together for the grant, for the money, it was very specific, and the amount of money that was spent on construction, our match, all of that was all laid out there. This came up later, as you know, down the road, that we had to obtain this right away at an additional cost. That was not part of the original agreement that we made with them to do this project. So your question is it part of the project? It is, but because it wasn't on the table originally, they're not going to pay for it. They're not going to come back and reimburse us for it because it wasn't part of what they agreed to pay for in the beginning.
so when we did all these other contract amendments to fix dates and times, we could not change the dollars. Is
Correct.
what you're saying.
Correct.
That was not eligible for correction because of the right-of-way
Right.
issues.
And I just want to make sure, I mean, if people take my word for gospel as they should, as 4,000, minor amount of money, but it's not that we couldn't go back and really pound our fist on the table that this is an eligible cost, but the risk for blowing up the whole thing wasn't worth it to us to, hey, these are real money. It is going to cost somebody, but we don't want to risk losing this whole deal. So in our mind, we held back. It doesn't mean we couldn't go ask for it, but the amendment to the whole deal is substantial.
Thank you.
Any additional question? I do have one additional question, and that is, if I understand correctly, there's a third year, fiscal year 2018, that we will be budgeting funds from. That's correct?
Correct.
Okay. So the money that's being currently allocated to the undesignated fund could be rolled into that budgetary item at that time?
Correct.
Got it. Thank you. All right. I think we're good. Is there any public comment on this item? I see none, so I will bring this back to the commission and entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion. Move to accept the Bureau of Indian Affairs grant of easement for roadway right-of-way and agree to pay $4,150 in just compensation to the owners as presented to the Carson City by the BIA for the roadway and associated improvements needed for the construction and maintenance of Sierra Vista Lane as part of the Federal Lands Access Program grant project across public domain allotment CC-398, also known as APN 010-291-06.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Passes unanimously, and we are now on to item 6E for possible action to approve a right of entry agreement and accept the donation of a permanent easement and right-of-way for the roadway and associated improvements needed for the construction and maintenance of Sierra Vista Lane as part of the Federal Lands Access Program grant project from Mark Allen Gregory and Sandra Joyce Guttery Gregory for APN 010-12136.
Thank you, Chair. This agreement is for private property This agreement is unique. This is of all the 8 properties, this is a unique one. And just to kind of jog your memory, back in October, the RTC approved 6 of the 8 private property. This is going to be the 7th one, and then the item following this is going to be the 8 of 8, so we will have all private properties. For this specific private property, there is concerns from the property owners about what to expect with the construction. Fencing material is needing to be moved, and they were concerned that it might not get put back in the right location, and they were just kind of concerned with making sure that things were going to be completed. And so they wanted us to enter into a legal agreement with them. As part of that agreement, we are going to be removing the existing fence, which will allow for the construction, the grading, and construction of the roadway. We're going to install a temporary fence just during the construction of the project. And then at the end, after the road is constructed, we will be putting back the fencing in its original location. Additionally, we will be adding a small driveway apron that connects this road to their property. So this is part of the agreement for getting a revised easement. The costs associated with this agreement are going to come out of the undesignated projects, but as noted in the last item, we will try and get the costs for fiscal year 2019 so that we can make up for that. The agreement has been signed by the private property owner, and so staff is requesting approval by the RTC for this item. That concludes my comments, and happy to answer any questions.
Dirk, do you have an estimate on the additional costs for this?
Right around $15,000 to $20,000.
If I may just add, when we were considering whether to enter into this agreement and in the negotiations with the property owner, we considered not doing this. And what we understood was that it would require a redesign of the project in a manner that would equate to far greater an expense than negotiating this agreement. So cost-benefit wise, staff determined this was the most cost-effective manner to move forward.
Questions from the commissioners?
Just a general question, I guess. So I just want to understand something. So they're going to get an additional improvement to their property that they didn't have in the first place, yet does not this road improvement benefit them? I guess I'm just concerned, why are we doing an extra?
The purpose was, I guess, the short answer is to get to yes, to be able to build the road, to reconstruct it. Their fence is being affected by this, which is different from some other private properties. But you're right that they will be benefiting from the roadway. But when we first started working with them, they were really standoffish, and we were concerned about not having the ability to revise that easement. If we had to redesign, not alone, the additional costs are definitely far exceed the costs that are associated with this agreement. But additionally, there's also a safety factor. There would have to been a very sharp turn in the roadway, which would have been unsafe. And so, based on kind of all these factors, and in order to get to yes, we started negotiating with the private property owner, and this is where we ended up.
But we don't have this same benefit to all the other property owners, is that correct?
That's absolutely correct.
Stephanie Hicks, Real Property Manager. For the record, I just want to add that because this is a project that is funded by federal funds, there is a requirement in federal legislation in regards to just compensation. And so we have to offer either preparing an appraisal or a waiver of such, and also offer the just compensation. So they were willing to waive the traditional appraisal process and going through actually paying for the additional right-of-way as we had to do with BIA in exchange for the agreement that was made. And again, based on timing to keep the project on schedule, as well as additional costs for redesign, costs for the appraisal and payment of the easement, the city decided that these concessions were well worth keeping this project on track.
Follow-up questions? Question?
I'll make a comment, I guess. This property, Lori, actually have a lot of familiarity with this parcel, but they're unique because they're right in a really heavily used in the past access to the river, and they had a lot of problems there for years. So when they put the fence in, that stopped all these problems and things. In the sense, the fence is really important, actually, for the neighborhood out there because it keeps all of the problems that were down at Mexican Dam there. Actually, it's famous for some of the parties that used to take place. Every kid that grew up in Carson City knows where the party place is at Mexican Dam. So they own that unique piece, and that fence was put in, and it's really right next to the roadway. So replacing it is really important as part of the project because it already exists, and then they're just getting they're going to get a nicer model, I guess, when they get done. But it's really critical not only to the project but to the road to get the easement, but for the community as a whole and the recreation in that area, and all kinds of things come into play. So there's more to that one piece. So the rest of the people aren't right on the property. People don't trespass through their land by any means more than this property owner used to have. And they're a little more protective of the property rights, which is they're totally within their rights. And we worked with them in the Carson River group down there too. And then there's a roadway that was closed years ago that used to go along the river that go through their property. So this is like a big piece of the puzzle that really needed to be fixed to be a part of the whole project. So I think these guys did a really good job to get it done, and all the work that went into this to get it done. I think it's really great because it could have been the big piece that fell out easily and messed up a really nice project. So I'm entirely supportive of what they did and totally understand what happened.
Just to clarify, my understanding is that they're not getting a better model fence. It's going to be the same materials. It's just going to be newer because it's being replaced. Is that correct?
That's correct. It's going to be the same fence.
Just so I can be clearer or understand, though, were we going to damage the existing fence? Right? We need to take the fence up to do the construction.
Correct. We have to take the fence out to do the grading and to do all the things we need to do with drainage and then to lay the road.
So I don't have any issue with the fence because, again, if we're having to take the fence up, we certainly should have to replace the fence. But what about the driveway apron? I guess that's really that's the betterment of the property. So I agree wholeheartedly with the fence. I'm trying to understand why are we, as the citizens, paying for the betterment of the property? What's the city benefit to doing the driveway?
The way that staff looked at it was right now there's just a gravel driveway, and we're putting down a new road, and that apron does protect the road to some degree. It reduces gravel from coming from the parcel onto the road. And so it was a little bit of that, but it was also a little bit of negotiations to get to yes.
And I would just add to that, there is a design consideration there where a culvert is crossing the road. The drainage currently naturally goes to that location where their gate is located, where that gravel driveway exists, but the culvert is also going to go to that same location because it's where the drainage is occurring today. So our concession was if we move the driveway down for them, there wouldn't be a further erosion there, and we could put in some riprap, and it would help that situation overall. So it did have to do with the design as well.
Any additional questions? Public comment? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the commission for a motion.
I'll make a motion Move to approve right-of-way entry agreement and accept donation of a permanent easement and right-of-way for the roadway and associated improvements needed for the construction and maintenance of Sierra Vista Lane as part of the Federal Lands Access Program. FLAP grant project from Mark Allen Gregory and Sandra Joyce Goodery Gregory, APN 010-121-36.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed say nay.
Nay.
You got that, Kathy? It's 3-1. Okay, we are moving on to item 6F for possible action to accept the donation of a permanent easement for the roadway and associated improvements needed for the construction and maintenance of Sierra Vista Lane as part of the Federal Lands Access Program grant project from Josh A. Oster and Michelle C. Oster Hamilton, assessor's parcel number 010-121-41.
Thank you, Chair. This item is straightforward. This easement, there's no agreement associated with it, and so it's really straightforward. This is the 8 of 8 private properties. So if approved, we will be taking all the private property easements and recording them, as we were asked to hold off at the October meeting until we had all 8. So that concludes my comments. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the commissioners? Public comment? I'll take a motion.
I move to accept the donation of a permanent easement for the roadway and associated improvements needed for the construction and maintenance of Sierra Vista Lane as part of the Federal Lands Access Program grant project from Josh A. Oster and Michelle C. Oster Hamilton, known as APN 010-121-41.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Passes unanimously. We're now on to item 6G for possible action to ratify right of entry agreements for construction of Sierra Vista Lane as part of the Federal Lands Access Program grant project from Kathy A. Martin, assessor's parcel number 010-121-21, Kaminsky Fitzgerald Family 2002 Trust, assessor's parcel number 010-121-25, Bruce A. Miller, assessor's parcel number 010-121-26, Randy W. and Lisa G.F. Jones, assessor parcel number 010-121-27, Brandon Revocable Trust, assessor's parcel number 010-121-37, Roger G. and Diana L. Preston, assessor's parcel number 010-121-38, and Josh A. Oster and Michelle C. Oster Hamilton, assessor's parcel number 010-121-41.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Stephanie Hicks for the record. In addition to the easements, the city has also proposed right of entry agreements with each of the 7 private property owners, the Gregories being the exception because their agreement included a right of entry. And essentially it provides for access during construction into areas that are not needed to be maintained within a permanent easement. Such right of entry agreements are typically signed by the Public Works Director and aren't typically brought forward to the board. But in this particular instance, because these right of entry agreements included a waiver of just compensation and discussion about the actual easement deeds, we were recommended by the District Attorney's Office to bring these forward for ratification.
Do these agreements include storage of materials or equipment, or is it just for access? So if they're grading, they can actually go outside the easement areas for grading?
If they did have some areas where they needed to store materials, it would be included in that as well. So it would be for any areas where we have needs during construction on the private properties.
And that'll be done in cooperation with the private property owners. So you would meet with them and say, okay, we would like to use this specific area to store this material.
Absolutely, and we have had those preliminary conversations with them as far as use of their property for varying needs.
Any additional questions? public comment? All right, I'll entertain a motion.
This is a longer one. I move to ratify right of entry agreements for construction of Sierra Vista Lane as part of the Federal Lands Access Program FLAP grant project from Kathy A. Martin, APN 010-121-21, the Kaminsky Fitzgerald Family 2002 Trust, APN 010-121-25, Bruce A. Miller, APN 010-121-26, Randy W. and Lisa G. F. Jones, APN 010-212-127. The Brandon Revocable Trust, APN 010-121-37. Roger G. and Diana L. Preston, APN 010-121-38. And Josh A. Oster and Michelle C. Oster Hamilton, APN 010-121-41.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. For the record, the assessor's parcel number for Randy W. and Lisa G.F. Jones is 101-121-27. There's a typo in the agenda. Is there any discussion on this item? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Passes unanimously. We are now on to item 6H. On the agenda for possible action to approve the submission of a Federal Lands Access Program FLAP grant application by the Public Works Department for trailhead, roadway, and drainage improvements between Kings Canyon Trailhead and just east of the Canyon Drive and Kings Canyon Road intersection. And this is Dirk.
Thank you, Chair. Staff is requesting permission to submit a second FLAP grant application. The deadline closes on December 7th. So we've estimated the project consists of reconstructing Kings Canyon Road up to the trailhead and then making improvements, expanding the trailhead at its current location. Additionally, there'll be drainage improvements that would be included. We've estimated the project to be about $3 million. There is a 5% required local match. As part of that estimating process, we did use numbers that we had with Sierra Vista Lane to try and get a better estimate. But do note that if we do get approved, there's a tentative approval, at which time Central Federal Lands will do a site visit. We will do a scoping, and there is a small charge to that scope. The last time it was about $10,000, of which we paid 5% of. But we will scope it with Central Federal Lands, and then we will refine that estimate, and then we will present a reimbursement and a project agreement to the RTC for approval, if approved. But again, we're requesting permission to submit a grant application. Attached to the staff report is a picture of the trailhead that is undersized. We've worked with the Parks Department. We've talked with the Forest Service, and everyone seems to be in agreement with what needs to happen. The existing road is between a 17 and a 30, which means that it's in a very poor condition on an index of 100. And we've recently put out pedestrian counters and bicycle counters to start getting an understanding of the usage out there. So with that concludes my comments, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
So part of the scope of work for this project would be replacing the gravel or dirt parking areas with asphalt, and then there's 2 drainage areas that are of concern, and it would repair or fix both of those, or attempt to fix both of those drainage issues.
It's going to add capacity to the second crossing of the stream farther west. The one eastern is actually right where the project's going to start. Due to the potential, we thought about adding this into the grant, but this grant could be a 4-year program, so you might not receive, if we did get approval, we might not see anything until 2021 and 22, and based on discussions with operations, we're going to have to make some improvements to that first stream crossing sooner than later, and so this project will start after that first bridge.
Questions from the commissioners?
Just accolades for, I mean, it's extra effort. There's nobody that says that you guys have to apply for these, so, and that's a really important place that the community uses for recreation. It's probably one of the top used locations for recreation in Carson City, and it's well past due, and so accolades to staff for taking this on and bringing it out. So you know you're going to get my vote.
I'll just add, if anyone else is gun shy on this, I can personally assure you it is highly unlikely that we'll have as many rights of entry agreements as we did with Sierra Vista.
No lawsuit.
That's on the record now, you understand that, right? Public comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the submission of the Federal Lands Access Program grant application by the Public Works Department for trailhead, roadway, and drainage improvements between the Kings Canyon Trailhead and just east of Canyon Drive and Kings Canyon Road intersection.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Passes unanimously. We are now on agenda item 7, internal communications and administrative matters, non-action items. We will start with item 7A, transportation manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a new item on our RTC agenda. The intent here is not to belabor these meetings or extend them unnecessarily, but to provide an opportunity for short snippets of information that may be of interest to you or to the public for ongoing staff activities. As we go through these first couple months or into the future, if there's anything that you hear where any of you would like to take action or hear more information at a future agendized item, just let me know. So for this one, I have 3 items for you, 3 updates. The Safe Routes to School Agreement Amendment number 1 was heard at the Board of Supervisors on the 16th of November. As you're aware, Public Works recently brought over Ms. Courtney Bloomer from the Department of Health over to Public Works. These amendments to her agreement were administrative in nature to clean it up and be consistent with that personnel change. So we're excited to have her as the bicycle and pedestrian coordinator for the city. And so now it's official with her agreement. The second thing is traffic volumes on South Carson and Fairview. We've gotten a lot of questions from the public and from some of you as well. The prediction was with the freeway extension opening, volumes would be reduced by approximately 40%. Just last week, staff did receive average annual daily traffic estimates, AADT, from NDOT for 3 locations, 2 on South Carson Street, one by the AutoZone there, about 0.1 miles north of the interchange there, and the second was about 0.2 miles north, just north of Kuntz on South Carson. Both of those demonstrated a roughly 45% reduction in AADT since opening of the freeway. The third location was on Fairview, just east of California, so right just east of the Lowe's right there. And that came back a significant reduction, over 60% reduced. And these are rough numbers for you, but so what that tells us is we are seeing the reductions anticipated. And so I've recommended working with our city engineer. We're going to move forward, continue moving forward with the design of the South Carson Street Corridor project as contained and recommended in that complete street study that came to you in June. So it's good news, it's something, so data is good. And the third update, just so everyone is aware in the public, CAMPO and RTC have 2 openings from upcoming December 2017 current term expirations of Mr. Smolensky and Mr. Zentino. Interviews for those applications received are planned to be conducted at the December 7th Board of Supervisors meeting, so just wanted to put that out there. That concludes my manager's report. Happy to take any questions.
Any questions from the commissioners? All right, on to 7B, street operations activity report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So 7B, what I'm looking at here over time is how are we changing what we're doing as seasons change, as the months go on. A couple numbers I wanted to highlight for you this month. Under the second box, tree care and maintenance, we're seeing more pruning activities in September than we had in August and July. Seasons are changing, as you know. Further down, stormwater, drainage inlets cleaned 83. Again, the fall, we're starting to clean out those drainage inlets, so you're going to start seeing that and I anticipate you'll see even higher numbers in October. If you go to page 2 of this report, under signs and markings, stop bars painted, we try to keep up. We have a really lean staff, and they do a great job of keeping up with those markings, so you're going to see a lot of stop bars this past month. And finally, I wanted to highlight at the bottom of signs and markings, second from the bottom, install street, bicycle, and pedestrian counters. This just relates to that CAMPO item earlier tonight. That's where you're going to see where we're installing those counters, so I just wanted to highlight that for you.
Any questions? Go ahead, Jim, first. then
Yeah,
Mary.
Lucia, this thought came to me as I was driving between Winnie and Long, right where the new rapid pedestrian light thing is. Is there maybe some public information that can go out to some of the individuals on how to use it?
That's a great question. One of the reasons we did bring over Ms. Bloomer into Public Works was to assist us with getting Public Works presence out onto social media. The beacon out there is something we've talked about putting out there, so we can certainly do that.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
So on your tree care and maintenance where it has tree removal, does that mean there's a replacement or they were just removed? Just so I can have clarity on that.
This is specifically tallying removals. There may or may not be replacements as far as I understand. But this is the total number of removals.
I'm just suggesting that then maybe we have another line that tells us how many new... I'd like to know whether we're replacing the tree or just taking them out.
I can talk with our operations manager about adding that.
Any additional
Staff comments? When I was in college, I took a class. There ain't no such thing as a free lunch. And this money that you just got for Sierra Vista probably has generated, I would guess, hundreds of hours of staff time. And a lot of times people don't see that all of the work that staff does to generate that, to get such a good grant and support this community. So I just want to acknowledge all the work that Dirk, taking the lead, has done to make this successful for this community. So I don't have a plaque or anything. I just but thank you very much for all that.
Nice job.
Great. We are now on item 7C, project status report. It's okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As usual, I will run through this briefly, and if you have questions, please let us know. The Carson City Freeway Multi-Use Path Project along Airport Road, construction of the roadway improvements was completed last week. We're working on the striping and concluding the painting and wrapping that portion up this week and possibly into next, depending on the weather. Regarding the multi-use path, we're starting construction this week, and it should be completed in December, again, weather permitted, on schedule. On to the next page, Sierra Vista Lane Reconstruction Project. In lieu of repeating Mr. Goring's presentations, I will just leave that at that. Silver Sage Drive Reconstruction Project. You're not going to see many updates here until the spring, if any. We're on schedule to construct in the spring. Last month, there were several/many ceiling projects in this packet. As you know, many were completed, but a few were postponed until the spring due to weather. There's 3 remaining in your packet, and these are the ones that are postponed until the spring. So you'll see them there until we get to them.
Lucia, they did do all the crack sealing on those just a couple of weeks ago, though, right?
We had been completing additional crack sealing and pothole filling as we head into the winter.
You got my hopes up. When I saw the crack sealing done, I thought maybe we were going to get the ceiling done, too.
We're doing as much as we can before the weather hits. As much as you can seal those roadways, you can preserve your base and extend their life, as you know. So, CDBG North Carson Street improvements. The Board of Supervisors heard and took action on CDBG grant award for these ADA improvements on November 16th. Public Works was awarded roughly $79,000 to complete improvements from John Street to Bath. Design is complete. Bids are scheduled for mid-January, and construction is scheduled for the spring. Battery backup improvements. Installation of 12 battery backup systems has already been completed. A contract will be going to RTC in December. for purchase of 24 additional battery backup systems, of which 12 will be reimbursed by NDOT, and the other 12 are budgeted. So that's that. South Carson Street bicycle and pedestrian improvements. As you know, we were awarded TAP and STBG funding for bicycle and pedestrian improvements. Currently, these are moving concurrent with the South Carson Street design. However, because they are fully funded and just by the nature of what they are, they will soon split off and likely be accelerated for implementation. So survey works at 90% complete for those. The Carson City Freeway multi-use path, this has not been updated since last month. NDOT has approved our agreement in October. However, we're still waiting for notice to proceed from them. The North Carson Street beacon that was previously mentioned was just completed. You know, we had a lot of public calling in. I have some new friends that I've talked to several times a week about this one, so I was excited that we got it completed just in time for Nevada Day. So this one will fall out of your packet next month. And finally, the big South Carson Street resurfacing and complete streets project. The city's in the process of assembling a design team. We're moving forward. As you know, or you may know, we're doing a lot of the design in-house, so we're really pleased to do that. We have some great designers, so that's really exciting. And that concludes any comments on that packet, unless you have any questions.
Any questions from the commissioners? No. I see none. All right, we will move on to item 8 on the agenda, board comments.
Agenda items, 7D.
Oh, 7D. Thank you, Lori. Future agenda items. Lucia?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Ms. Bagwell. December RTC, I've already given you a spoiler alert earlier this evening. You will be asked to formally support Carson City's pursuit of 2018 CDBG grant funding, and this is for improvements to College Parkway. You'll see that next month in 2 weeks. The JAC $2 driver base wage that I mentioned earlier. Traffic signal battery backups that I just mentioned in the project status report, and the Sierra Vista acceptance of right-of-way from BLM that we discussed previously. So that's what we have on the list for December.
Items from the commissioners. Lori?
I have one. So if possible, and it doesn't have to necessarily be December, I'd like just a report or an informational item on how you time signals. I'm getting tons and tons of phone calls dealing with that, so I think it would be just a great agenda item for you to explain to the public the process.
And how complex it is?
It is. It would be nice for the, anyway.
That's a great suggestion. Thank you.
Any additional requests from the commissioners? All right, now we'll move on to item 8. Board comments. Lori? Nope. Tim?
I'm fine.
Any additional?
No, I already did mine.
All right, so we're good. Jim, go ahead.
I don't know if I can back up to one thing. You had mentioned on one of those parcels, did it have to be changed in both of the thing or just a one time?
I read it correctly
Okay.
previously. Yeah, it was just a
Type 1.
Yeah, just a typo. We're now on item 9 on the agenda, the final public comment. Last chance for public comment. All right, we're good. Item 10, the next meeting is tentatively scheduled for 4:30 p.m. Wednesday, December 13th, 2017, right here in this room after the CAMPO meeting. So we'll see you all there, and we are adjourned. Thank you all for attending.